And it stretched me so thin. By the end of my second year on YouTube, I wanted to quit because I was done. Here's one thing that I think agents kind of miss the boat on is they think that
you run one of the top real estate teams in Austin, Texas, and you get somewhere like 80% your business from YouTube. You run a 15,000 YouTube channel.
I had been working at Costo for 14 years. I knew that I was going to live on $50,000 a year. So one time a professor at UCSD walked up to me and he's like, "What are you doing? How much do you make a year?" And I told him, and he goes, "How much do you think you're worth?" And I was like, "Well, $100,000 a year. Only $100,000. You're only worth that." And so I think that really stuck in my head. What am I really worth? And this is what I think about when anytime I get demoralized about, this content's not hitting or whatever. It might be the next video. It might be the next thing. I mean, think about all the comedians that finally blow up. It wasn't the one video that they did or the one time on stage that they blew up. It was the years of experience learning what was working and what wasn't working. Video's not perfect, but no lead source is perfect. I have videos on my YouTube channel that are way old, and I look and I'm like, oh my God, the video's still getting views? And that's the greatest part about YouTube. They might click on one of your videos and now they fall into the rabbit hole. So imagine doing $20, $30 million a year where you have more time, and then you do another $20 million a year in referrals.
So looking at like your strategy going to 2024, what you're actually looking to do. You run one of the top real estate teams in Austin, Texas, and you have been very notable in the Austin market. You've gotten, when you're an XP Icon agent, multiple years in a row.
Yep.
And I think you get somewhere like 80% or more of your business from YouTube. And you run a 15,000 YouTube channel. Now, everyone can see all of that. They see the accolades, they see the so-called finish line, but what do I need to know about your earliest years to understand like the man that sits on the other side of the screen for me today? Because I like to think of people's lives kind of like a set of dominoes where usually things have to kind of fall in place for you to get where you are today. So what were those like first few dominoes for you?
Yeah. So, well, thanks for having me, first of all. So it's interesting. The first few years in real estate were I got in because I had been working at Costco for 14 years. I had put out many of their new programs, made them lots of more money to their bottom line. And when I kept asking like, hey, where do I make a little bit more money? It was always, oh, well, keep working and you'll get promoted to make maybe $2,000 more a year. So at a certain point, I realized that I needed to go to business for myself. I was running businesses, I was running teams, I was running all of that. So I needed to find my own. So when I got into real estate, I was up for Rookie of the Year at my previous brokerage, my very first brokerage. And that was because I dialed every day. I called 4 or 5 hours, expires withdrawals. I did open houses every weekend. I mean, I worked myself to the bone. Second year in real estate, my number one goal was not to ever have to go back to work at Costco again. So when I got into real estate, I did really well my first year. Second year, we knocked it out of the park, started growing a team. I think we did like 74, 75 transactions. And I looked at my bottom line at the end of the day and I had outspent myself. I'd spent money on every single lead source. I had spent money on things I didn't need to. So I started looking at ways to cut down my expenses and to maximize my profits. That way I could stay in business because most agents find themselves out of business at that point. So I started looking into video, what I need to be doing with social media. So, I started really diving into YouTube. Now, that whole time I still was making calls, still doing things. And it took 4 years really to figure out what I was doing wrong with YouTube to figure out what I needed to do right. So when I see a lot of the new channels that are people out there that basically take the tools that I give them, like you have to understand the tools that people have now to run YouTube channels are people like myself, Ken Posick, Dan Parker, Christina Smallhorn. All of us were in a group of agents that were trying to figure this thing out. And so it took 4 or 5 years to figure out what we were doing wrong. And so I could start implementing what I needed to do right. And from there, business took off. We were still hustling every year, but for the last 3 years, now my business comes from YouTube, past clients from YouTube, referrals from YouTube, agents reaching out to join our brokerage. I mean, there's so many different ways that YouTube has been the core of our growth. To do multi-million dollar years is because, in revenue is because of YouTube.
Yeah, and we'll dive into because you have so much that you've learned from like the content that you've done uh, and everything that you know. We'll dive into that in a little bit. I do want to kind of take a little step
Sure.
back because I've actually seen you mention that a few times where you wanted to do everything in your power not to return to Costco and never have to go back. I was just curious, why was that like such a big driver for you?
Well, reality is like my future was capped every year, right? I had to work a little bit extra hours to make a little bit more. You know, I always felt I could do better things. I had a degree and I was at a place where you didn't really need a degree to do well. In fact, I saw people getting promoted that were just towing the company line. And I was out there like trying to, think of revolutionary ways to grow specific pieces of the business. For example, I ran the whole, when you walk into Costo, you see all of the, cameras and all that stuff. I helped grow one of the fastest and best growing departments in that store in Southern California when we launched in the warranty program. And I taught our agents, or not agents, I taught the people there how to use the scripts to talk to people about it. I taught people how to talk about it, how to convert these. And when at the end of the day, I looked at how much they had made and realized that I was the reason why they were making that much money, because nobody was giving out scripts. Nobody was giving out information. For 14 years, my year was capped. I didn't really know, I knew that I was going to live on, $50,000 a year. And, one time, this is crazy. So one time I was running the front end, right? So I was a supervisor. I was running the front end. So when you walk into the registers and you're there and everybody's checking out, I was running the front end. So all the pieces that are moving there, like I was the one controlling all the pieces, right? Who goes to break? Who goes to here? Who opens? All that. A professor at UCSD walked up to me and he looked at me and he's like, "What are you doing?" And maybe this is the catalyst, really. I go, "Well, I'm running the front end here." And he goes, "How much do you make a year?" And I told him, and he goes, "How much do you think you're worth?" And I was like, "Well, $100,000 a year." And he goes, "Why are you doing a $50,000 a year job then?" And he goes, and then his last parting words when he walked away is like, "Only 100,000. You're only worth that." And it just walked away. And so I think that really stuck in my head for a long time, is like, what am I really worth? Am I worth just this? Am I worth like, what can I? And so I think that was a catalyst why I never wanted to go back, because I never wanted to be worth just that much. I wanted to have an open end, because the best story I have in joining real estate was, the warehouse managers at Costco make, they're a set cap plus they get bonuses. So let's call it 120,000 a year, right? And then they get bonuses, right? So I was closing a deal. There was a $4 million deal. And I was buying Dom Perignon for a client that was like, the closing gift. And as I was walking out, I ran into a warehouse manager that I used to know. And the warehouse manager's like, "Oh, dude, what are you doing here? Dom Perignon, that's amazing. Oh, I have a client closing on a $4 million home." And he goes, "Wow, that's more than I make in a year." It was off that one transaction. Now, again, like nobody sees how much work going into getting a $4 million client, to closing a $4 million home. So from the outside, it's like, wow, you did nothing to get that, right? But walking away knowing that I had literally made as much as my cap basically in one transaction was probably one of the best feelings.
Yeah. And I was curious, like, do you have an entrepreneurial like background as a kid, or like are your parents entrepreneurial, or are they more like my parents were very like corporate, and that's kind of why I was like so stuck going down that route. And then like, well, can you talk to me about like yours?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't come from like, everybody around so other than my immediate family, my family outside of that was all, relatively poor, for lack of better words. And I realized I didn't want to be like that. I was very fortunate. I had two parents, right? And, not all my family had that. So I definitely was fortunate that way. But my parents always pushed me to do Boy Scouts, all these different things. And in there, I was constantly working for, in the Boy Scouts, we would do all these community projects and all of these things. And so that was a way to make extra money. And so I would always go do all these community projects. In fact, for my Eagle Scout project, I built a walkway in an area that had no handicap walkway. We built the walkway over 100 feet. So people handicapped could get to the bathroom. And so I guess I would have to say a lot of it, I would say, was from my parents pushing me to be involved in different things, to do community projects, to give back. And so I think that's primarily where the driver comes from. I wouldn't say necessarily I had an entrepreneurial background, or people around me that were entrepreneurial, but I think it was the constant push to do better. And funny enough, my mom always pushed me to do, think about this and laugh. My mom always pushed me to do community speaking because she hated it when she was a kid and wanted me to be able to be a better community speaker. And I did this project one time and I won like best in state for community speaking. What's funny about that is that I never even thought about that. That is what has really driven me to be on camera, where I know a lot of people are scared to be on camera. So I could care less about being on camera because I could care less about those things. I'm here to do a thing, right? And so it's because I did so much that community speaking, I'm able to be on camera, I guess, a little bit more.
What did you learn from that experience that you probably use now?
Probably just not to worry about the little things, not to worry about what people think about you, what people like. It's great to get accolades, and I think this is where a lot of real estate agents, when they're either afraid to do video or they're afraid to success in their business, is sometimes they're afraid of what people are going to say. I kind of realize like I don't really care what people say because I care about what I am saying. I don't care what people are saying back to me. Now, feedback's good, obviously, but I don't care about, if agents or people don't like what I'm saying. Well, awesome. Like, you're not the client for me. You're not the agent for me. And so to have that kind of thick skin where it's a little bit, now that doesn't always do the best for me, that does push people off. But my close friends are close and my close clients are close.
Yeah. And you have a quote that I think kind of ties this all together a little bit. You said, if you're going to put out a 10-minute video and people are watching 2 minutes of it, part of it's because you're probably selling at the very beginning. And I think that kind of ties into you learning about like what to say, how to say it, like being intentional with what you say on camera as well.
Yeah.
Could you talk about that quote a little?
Yeah. One of the things that if you think about the level of respect and the level of trust with realtors, here's the list, right, of the professions people trust. Here's lawyers, and then here's realtors under that, right? It's the very bottom. And the problem is because people see realtors as just salespeople. And I don't really care for that either. Like when I see people doing like super gimmicky things, like sometimes I'm like, ugh. So when I look at that, I realize like that's not what I wanted to be. And when I was creating and cultivating my YouTube channel, I wanted to give information, because especially with YouTube is all about information. People are searching for information. They're searching to be entertained. And if you're constantly on there saying, oh, hey, buy with me, I sell real estate here, people really don't care. They can look in the description to see who you are. So I always tell agents, get straight to the point, get straight to the information, because then you'll keep people longer, right? And then from there, people trust you more. And I think that's a lot harder to do on short form content to build trust. Whereas if somebody comes into your YouTube channel and they're watching hours of your content and you're being very open and honest, people will trust you. And I think that's where we do really well with our channel, and why like our client base is a great client base. It's not necessarily people that just want to buy a home. They want information. They want to feel like they're making the right choice.
Yeah. And I think that's like the big distinction in like YouTube versus short form, is like short form people are just kind of scrolling to be entertained. They're mindlessly numbing themselves, versus YouTube, like you're intentionally watching a video and you're there to get something from it. And I think that lends itself is why it lends itself so well for like real estate, because real estate is about trust. It is about connection. So you're able to go deeper and build that trust on YouTube versus short form. You can't.
Yeah. And what's interesting, if you think about some of the YouTube channels that do really well right now, the informational channels like mine do very well long form. The other channels that do really well are the listing walkthrough videos, where if you think about it, there's like, in my market, Raj Sahu, right? Raj is a real broker with me as well. He basically, he's not even on camera. It's just him talking about experiences with clients, and it's all a walkthrough tour of the listings. He's talking about, his clients. He's talking about experiences, what to be looking for. I have a second channel now that I'm doing that's a little more towards that. I'm trying to diversify the business here, but I think as you're talking, you don't even have to be on camera. People want to hear trustful things, right? And it's really hard you're right. It's hard to do that in a 30-second clip. People can watch, an hour of your 30-second clips all together, but it's not as impactful as somebody watching 4 hours or more. I mean, I get calls literally all the time where somebody's like, "Hey, I just got done watching, literally, I binge watched 5 hours of your content. Here's what I'm looking for." And you're like, "Oh, wow." And then when they meet you in person, they're like, "I feel like I'm meeting a celebrity." And you're like, well, "I'm just the guy selling real estate." It's not that cool.
Yeah, but you are like a celebrity in your own right. But I agree with you, like on both sides of the coin for that. I kind of want to dive a little bit because I do feel like you're doing something very interesting with like your second channel. Like I've heard you kind of talk about like the business that you're trying to build and the expansion and the ideas of that, which I want to talk about a little bit too. But to kind of dive into like your current content, and correct me if I'm wrong, like your content buckets are like Austin news, the neighborhoods, like the suburbs, the market stuff, and then listing tours. Is that correct, or is there like some other buckets?
Yeah, I removed the listing tours from the channel, and now that's all its secondary owned channel. So that's what we removed from the channel. I talk a lot about the news. I mean, the reality is people want to know what's going to happen in specific areas. So, for example, if I can pull up all the information happening in a hit city like Hutto, which is right outside of Austin. Now, why would somebody want to move to Hutto? Well, they really probably don't. They'd rather move directly into Austin, but the reality is the pricing probably is going to push them there. So what is coming there that would make you want to actually live there? Here's all the things, right? Here's all the businesses coming here. Here's why you would want to be here. So if I'm a consumer and I'm trying to figure out, okay, I like the prices in Hutto, but I also like the prices maybe over in Leander. What's the difference of these two? Well, there's a full video on what to expect in Leander. Now there's a full video on what's coming in Hutto. Now I'm informed. Now I'm going to call Jeremy and be like, all right, give me your take. And so that's what happens a lot, right? Or let's say you're looking for luxury and you don't really know the best luxury area, right? Let's say I'm looking for a $2 million home in Austin. What do I get for $2 million in Austin? Well, I'm giving you all the information. You're going to call me and be like, all right, look, here's what I'm looking for. Like right now, I'm working with clients up to $5.5 million, about to take a $10 million listing. And so, I wouldn't be working in that playground if it's not something I would have talked about.
Yeah. And I was curious, like, how did you end up landing on, because you do a lot of like market and like Austin news, like how did you land on doing something like that versus like you could have taken the channel in 100 different ways, kind of like we talked about, like the listing tours, etc.
Honestly, it came out of frustration. To be honest, I had so many people. Like, think about this: if you're an agent and you're sitting down with each buyer, and each buyer you're having the exact same conversation. It's okay. What are you looking for? What are you doing? Like, and then you get to the next part, and you have to explain the next part. I kind of got tired of explaining things, so I realized, like, okay, if I can make content that's not the 5 things to look for when buying a home, right? Or, whatever, because I see a lot of agents do, what is a FHA? Okay. But that's all, when people ask me those questions, I'm like, here's a lender, talk to a lender. But when it comes to those things, I got tired of people asking me where to live, where to do. So I figured if I just started talking about the pros and cons of each one of these neighborhoods or areas, people will find it. They'll find value in that, and then they'll trust me a little bit more. And it's not that they didn't trust me. It's just I was coming from the world of cold calling and doing open houses. It is so hard to build trust. Like in the first 30 seconds, you got to build trust or they're bouncing out. In fact, the first 5 seconds, you got to build trust. And so it's a lot harder to build trust on a cold call. And I figured if I talked about what people were actually searching for, then I would get more business. And I did.
So looking at like your strategy going to 2024 and like what other agents do, like what are the, let's just call it maybe 3, 5, or 10, or just like the proven videos that like every agent could do, or that you, based off your experience, what you're actually looking to do in 2024?
Yeah, I'd say any agent that's looking to do YouTube or do content, I would find the most trustworthy content you can give out, right? And the content that represents you and what you do the most. So it's going to be case by case. Like in my market, new construction is a big thing. So I'm going to talk about new construction. People have questions about new construction. The market, obviously, the housing market's always a topic that people are concerned about. What are rates going to do? What's going to happen here? What are the things to look out for? So for me, continue to do market update videos, doing videos about what's actually happening in Austin, right? Because those are the things that people are looking for. What else are people searching for in your area when they're moving or when they're selling? What are they actually searching for? There's lots of different tools out there that'll tell you like what are the biggest search metrics people are looking for, and I would just do content on what people are searching for.
So that's interesting because I feel like you like both. If we look at YouTube, there's search and there's suggested. And you have like those big major traffic sources, and suggested is actually, and I don't know what you see on your, I think it's like the biggest traffic source on YouTube. It pulls up like 60 to 80 or even higher % of the traffic.
Yeah.
And I've seen you say, actually don't focus too much on like TubeBuddy and other elaborate like SEO. Like, what are your thoughts on like the search and suggested and all of that?
Well, yeah, you definitely want to get. So your videos when you start out are not going to get in suggested. They're just not. They're good. They're going to be more in search. So, but as people are searching around, then your videos will start getting suggested. And so that's where my channel kind of took off, is after, 3 or 4 months of putting out similar content about similar topics. Now when people are searching those topics, my videos are now suggested. So those I don't have to rely as much on SEO to get my videos out in front of more people. The problem I see with SEO, where people just focus just on the SEO or TubeBuddy and all of that, you could have like a 100 score and it doesn't get suggested. And so I see agents are like, oh, I did everything right. TubeBuddy said this is 100 and I got 0. Well, look at the thumbnail. How catchy is the thumbnail? Okay, the title sounds good, but does your audience actually going to click on that? Like, what is a verbiage your audience uses? Does that actually fit your audience? Does the titles, the tags actually fit your audience? Who is your audience? And I think that's where agents don't really understand. They think SEO, because it's so easy for me to put together a course selling you SEO. It's a lot harder for me to show you how to build an audience, your audience.
Which is, it's interesting because basically what you're saying is like tap into what people are already searching for when you're early on, build off of search, and then as you start to build, then start to focus more on like building your audience through suggested. Is that kind of right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And so you mentioned people not knowing how to build like your audience. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So this is one of the things I talk about. I go around the country kind of giving talks about this. Who is your audience, right? Who are the people you work with? Who are the people you like to work with? What areas of town are you wanting to be in? And here's one thing that I think agents kind of miss the boat on is they think that they need 100,000 followers on Instagram, or they need, 15,000 subscribers on YouTube. I know channels out there that have 1, 2, 3,000 subscribers, and they are crushing it in real estate. So you don't have to have a ton of subscribers to do really well, but you have to have an audience. And what happens is when you build the audience, they share with their friends, and now your videos are around more of the same people. So who are the people that you work with, right? Are they high? Like for me, I work with a lot of tech entrepreneurs in the Austin area. What do they want to know? They want a lot of data and information, and they want the correct data and information. They want to know where to look. And so if you see my videos, it's a lot of data and information. I go through and look at the stats. I talk about what areas, because what happens is a lot of investors reach out to me. Now, investors aren't my core. My core is buyers and sellers buyers coming to Austin and sell, and those same buyers now selling. But the offshoot is now I have other people because I'm focusing on one group only. I know it wasn't Gary Keller that put it out, but the Jay Papasan, the one thing, focus on the one thing. So focus on the people that are getting you business, and you'll compound it. And that's why YouTube's done really well. I have so many different income sources just because I focused on YouTube.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the monetization side in a second too. But I want to double click on like the audience and kind of like researching for that audience.
Yeah.
When you think about, like, for example, I'm sure you hear this a lot where like an agent says, "Oh, but I don't want to just work with I don't want to just make videos in this area because I work with all types of clients." Like you can go too far to like one extreme. Like people can say like, "But I want to work with just these specific type of clients," or the other people that feel like if they go too specific, they're gonna like push away everyone that's broad in their market, like Orlando, Tampa, Austin, etc.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to, like, niching down will help you where you're getting your time back and filtering out people that you don't necessarily want to work with. And so that's why it's okay to niche down. If you go too wide, then you're going to have too many time suckers. And this is what really I had to learn my first year and a half was like, I was trying like, oh, amazing. People are reaching out. I want to work with every single person that reaches out to me because I need to work with every single person. I need the business. And it stretched me so thin. By the end of my second year on YouTube, I wanted to quit because I was done. And so now I focus on the thing, like the areas I want to work in. I focus in on the areas that are sold to my business. A prime example, Raj Sahu, he does just property tour videos. He only works with people that want to buy new construction in one specific area. So it's like 3 communities all in one specific area. Everything else he refers out. So imagine doing, $20, $30 million a year where you have more time, and then you do another $20 million a year in referrals, right? Or you build out a team that works the rest of that, however you want to do it. I mean, everybody works at different brokerages that have different flexibility, but imagine like, okay, yeah, you're going to make 25, 30, 40% maybe, depending on how you do your referral fee. But imagine all the time you got back not having to work with that other 20 million.
Yeah, that's huge because then once you're referred out, it's just straight income at that point because you're not doing any of the work
right
that would be required.
Right. You're not driving around in your car all day, because then the other thing is you're not able to film what actually or do what gets you business. And this is where agents really, really mess up in their business. They get so busy and they get so locked into, I need this paycheck, I need this paycheck, I need this paycheck, that they forget what was actually getting them those paychecks to begin with. And so they stop doing that thing. So that's like, I tell people this all the time. I've actually written down the dollar amount that I lose when I don't shoot content. I looked up how much business came in from YouTube. I looked at all the videos I've done and did the math to work down. And I said this the other day at a conference that we did. And one of the people that was a presenter, Rod Alawan, he's in New Braunfels. He literally texted me. He's like, dude, I actually sat down and did the math. He's like, it costs me over $10,000 not to do a video. Like it costs me that. He's like, now I understand why you're so adamant about putting that content and the consistency.
Yeah. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because you struggled with consistency early on. You mentioned that like it was a tough thing for you.
I didn't realize how consistency got me business, right? If you think about agents when they get in the business, or agents that are in the business, they go, okay, it's 2024. I need a new lead source. My new lead source is going to be YouTube. Okay. So they spend 3 months putting out all this content. And then month 4, they get tired or they start getting business and then they stop. Well, what happens is that lead flow starts to slow down. You'll still get leads, but it'll slow down. And then you're going, God, why am I slow? Why don't I have the business that I thought I was going to get? And that was happening with me when I started YouTube. I'd put out 3 or 4 videos and then I'd run around town selling homes, and then I'd put out 3 or 4 more videos. And then my business did that roller coaster thing. Now we're pretty consistent across the board because I have 3 years of buildup of videos, but I'm still putting out new information. In fact, I get calls, DMs all the time like, oh, the video you just did, blah, blah, blah. You mentioned this. Hey, so I'm looking for this. So it is really important to be consistent, and YouTube won't take you seriously or help grow your channel unless you're consistent. Same thing with Instagram, TikTok, all these other things. Like you might have one video that goes viral. Awesome. And I hear a lot of agents that are on TikTok, Instagram, wherever. Oh, I had X amount of views on this. Okay. How much business did you get? Well, I mean, it's exposure. Okay. And then they start chasing that next viral video instead of chasing the business.
Yeah. And I think a good example of this to kind of talk about this is like, for example, your second listing channel. There's a lot of people who start out on YouTube and they'll create videos and they'll get very demotivated that they only get 50, 100 views.
Yeah.
Some people, I think we get so caught up in like the metrics sometimes that we're looking like, sometimes you can get really caught up in looking at the click-through rate, the average view duration, to the point where it's not good. And like you're over analyzing. Whereas like YouTube and really anything in business, it's actually about the small, tiny gains that compound over the long term. What's your thought on like that, all of that?
That's the same thing of any part of this business, right? Whether you're doing mailers, you're making calls, you're doing community events. I mean, I see people that spend so much money doing community events, and then they're like, I haven't got anything out of it. And it always reminds me of this meme or GIF or whatever you want to call it. And this is what I think about anytime I get demoralized about, this content's not hitting or whatever. It's the 2 people that have axes in their hand and they're digging towards diamonds. There's the guy that's literally right there and turning around, walking away, while the other guy is digging. That is exactly the best picture I can tell anyone about why you need to be consistent, because it might be the next video and might next be the next thing. I mean, think about all the comedians that finally blow up. It wasn't the one video that they did or the one time on stage that they blew up. It was the years of experience learning what was working and what wasn't working. Now, look, video is not perfect, but no lead source is perfect. And once people do start to find you, they're going to go back and find the catalog of your time. And then they're going to start watching it. Now, I have videos on my YouTube channel that are way old. And I look and I'm like, oh my God, the video is still getting views. And that's the greatest part about YouTube is it's evergreen. People are going to continue to search, they continue to get suggested. They might click on one of your videos and now you have all these other videos that pop up for them to look at and they go, oh, okay, I'll watch this one or this one. And now they fall into the rabbit hole.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I think it's building that catalog. Now, talking about like, because you're pretty big on like what people kind of do wrong on YouTube, I want to kind of start from the beginning and then go through like from like the research to like kind of like the idea of the thumbnail, the title, to like the editing, posting, etc. So starting with the research side, I think I've seen like you do a little bit of work on like Twitter, or like you get some ideas possibly from there, or like what do you do for your ideas? And maybe that was just earlier on, you got some of your ideas from.
So I think it's really important to ask, especially when you're starting YouTube, ask your community, what they're looking for. Go into Facebook groups like the Moving To groups, post polls on your Facebook, post polls on Instagram, ask questions, ask what people are looking for. Look at the comment section on the posts that you've created. What are the comments on the posts that you've created in the past? That should be an inspiration for your content, because there you go. That's what whatever people are talking about is what, if a small amount of people are talking about it, possibly a larger amount of people are thinking about it. So Twitter's a good example of that. You can go through Twitter. What I like to do is just go through and do the hashtag housing market, housing update. And I look for what people are talking about. I follow Broke Agent Media. They're great because they do a lot of the hot sheet in the morning. There's a lot of good stuff that I'll steal from that. And, we do a live stream once a week. I would say a third of that probably comes from what they talk about, because they talk about national stuff. So I'll take the national stuff and go, okay, here's Austin. Here's nationally what's happening. How does that relate to Austin? So it does take a little bit of work. So, every video I produce, it takes me 30 minutes to shoot the video. It probably takes me 2 to 3 hours to come up with the content. Luckily, I work in buckets, so I already kind of know what next week's video should be about. So I'm already thinking and looking for, throughout the week, articles that pertain to that. Sometimes I'll batch content, all of it, so I'll shoot it all in one day. It just depends on what I have going on in the week. I have an editor that edits that content, that video down for me, so I don't have to spend 10 hours editing a video. And then we'll try to cut shorts out of that. We're working on a better system for that. But yeah, each video of that long form roughly takes, if you do all the time in math, you're talking 15 to 20 hours of work per video.
Yeah. And I think what you kind of said of doing that 2 to 3 hour prep work is kind of underrated in a way. Most people kind of want to get behind a camera and just shoot. Versus trying to think through what you're going to say before you're going to say it.
Yeah, it's hard, and then people ask me, do you put it on a teleprompter? Do you bullet point it? I like to read through a bunch of different articles or whatever I'm doing a video on. I like to read all the articles. Sometimes I'll put them in a chat GPT and say, give me the most important pieces from this. So it gives me bullet points. And then I'll put my bullet points up. And so as I'm talking, I'm going, okay, here's bullet point 2. All right, this leads me to this. This leads me to this. What do you think about this? Now let's talk about this. And it's all kind of bullet pointed. And so I already kind of have my 6 or 7, 8 bullet points. There's people out there that have to have it scripted and they use a teleprompter. That's awesome. Do that. But I like to have my bullet points because I like to mess up in my videos too, because then it comes a little more organic. If I'm reading, it sounds too inauthentic.
So how do you think through the script, or I guess for you, the outline, between the hook, the calls to actions, the different parts, how do you think through that while you're setting up that in the front end and then also shooting the video?
All right. So let's say the video is about the Austin housing market, right? Okay. So when I talk about the Austin housing market, there's a lot that goes into the housing market besides just home sales. Now, home sales is one piece. I'm going to save that portion for the last probably third of the video. And I'm going to talk about all the things that are happening in the market leading up to that information. So what else do I want to talk about? What happened in the last month? Did the jobs report come out? Are there layoffs happening? Did a new company just hire 1,000 people? What are the things that are happening in the market that would then lead to those numbers? All right, well, now let's talk about the numbers. By the way, I'm asking for engagement throughout the entire video. Did you see this? Have you had that happen? What do you think? Right? And so that way, again, I'm talking to my audience. People don't understand, when I'm sitting here talking, I am talking to a camera. I'm talking to a lens. There's nobody out there. But people sitting there are having a relationship with you that you're not having with them. So you got to think about the things you're talking about. People are going to hang on every word. So you got to make sure that you actually kind of understand what you're talking about. I think that's where most agents don't create content because they don't fully understand. I think if you read enough, after a while, you will really start to understand what's happening.
Do you follow or look at any Graham Stephan videos maybe previously? Or
I did. I like the way Graham puts together his story arch. I think he does a very good job of that. So I would say to anybody that's trying to figure out the style that you want to be, find a bunch of different people, and maybe not just in the real estate space, because Graham doesn't really talk about real estate space that much. I mean, he does every now and then, but it's more of a financial space. But I would look through all the different people out there and see how they put together their story and then go from there. And that'll help you figure out the hook to the middle, to the end, to the end of the video, how to get out. I think the problem agents make too is they spend too much time at the end of the video, like kind of blabbering, and they don't get to the end. And one thing Christina Smallhorn taught me is when you get to the end it. Because then it wants people wanting more. Oh, shit, now I got to click on the next video. Hey, by the way, I talked about this in the last video. Watch this one out, right?
Yeah. And pitching the next video is really big. The reason I brought Graham up because you kind of do a very similar, I'm sure like a lot of people do, but it's you lay up the problem. Like you're setting the stage for the problem in the Austin market. Like here's all the things that are the reasons why.
Yeah.
And then you kind of present like the details, the facts, the solution, etc.
Yeah, I don't think I always have the solution, but I'll give my opinion.
I guess the opinion is probably more of like the payoff for that type of video,
right?
Versus the solution.
Yeah, right. The payoff. Yeah. Yeah, I would say, I used to watch Graham in the very beginning. I haven't really watched him, but I think if you are looking to do more informational content, he's definitely a good person to understand how he's setting up the videos.
And so you talked about this earlier, like the thumbnails and the titles, like you've put out hundreds of videos. What have you learned about doing titles and thumbnails right and wrong that you're doing now through everything that you've kind of taken away?
Yeah, I realize I still suck at it. It's definitely not, there are so many ways to have a good thumbnail. Most people will tell you that they come up with the thumbnail first before they come up with the content. I come up with the content first and then relate the thumbnail. I don't think there's a magic bullet on which way to do it. As far as coming up with thumbnails, I create the thumbnails. I really need to move to having somebody else create the thumbnails just to take that piece off my plate. But when I'm doing that, explaining what I want the thumbnail to look like, I've been using AI a little bit to do that, ChatGPT 4. It's coming out okay. It's not coming out as great as I would like it to. There's still a lot of tweaking, and I haven't really found like the magic bullet on that yet either. But I think when you're looking at titles, if 10 agents were to make the exact same video with the exact same content, and they were all in your suggested feed, right? So if you clicked on Austin housing market, okay? Now you have all of these thumbnails on the side on all of these titles that are very similar, but you have this title that kind of pops a little bit more, right? It has, more urgent words in it or bigger words in it. And the thumbnail matches that title, and they're all relatively the same. I'm going to click on the one with the better thumbnail and title every single time. And so that's where I think, everybody that gets caught up in the SEO doesn't realize that if you don't have a good thumbnail, you don't have a good title, people are just not going to click on it.
Yeah. And I think that kind of ties everything together of what I was like, I feel like, especially in real estate, because it's so hyper local, people get really tied up in the search and they like overstuff, make super long titles, and it's not really interesting versus trying to actually make the title and thumbnail interesting and clickable, which I feel like you really dial in on.
Yeah, it's tough when you're doing like property tour videos to make them super clickable. That's what I'm running into on that channel. It's definitely not easy to do that. I mean, there's only so many shots of a house you can take to make it stand out, and or things in a house that really stand out. So I'm running into some trouble there. But as far as the other thing, the thumbnail and the title, I think, are way more important. A prime example, my friend Trey Serrano put out a video. It's basically a knockoff of one of the videos that I had created, and for San Antonio, and the thing went berserk. And I was like, hey man, what tags are you using? That's pretty awesome. And he was like, tags, what do you mean? The guy didn't even know how to put tags in his videos, and his video was going off. So thumbnail was great, title was great, people clicked on it, the content was good. That's what I think is most important.
Yeah. I think Alex Hormozy like talked about this. He's like, it doesn't really matter. Like he kind of phrased it as like the title and thumbnail doesn't necessarily matter if the content is so good.
Mm-hmm.
It matters less than like what some people think, for example.
Yeah, the content definitely has got to be the driver, and you definitely got to understand what you're saying. And I think that's where you were talking about analysis by paralysis by analysis earlier. You didn't use that term, but that's what you were talking about. And I see agents that go, "Oh, well, I'm not that good, so I can't do that. I'm not that good." I was not good my first video. I was not good my second video. I was not good my third video. I probably was not very good my 20th video. I started getting better when I had done like 30, 40 videos, and I could see what I was doing right, what I was doing wrong, looking at the analytics after that, looking at way other people were doing it. So don't get caught up in what you're not doing right now, and just focus on what you can do right now and then build on that.
Yeah. Jesse Itzler's talked about this with podcasts. It's like 90% of podcasts like stop after 10 episodes, 99% stop after 20. So you're in the top 1% just going to 21 and translating that to YouTube. I think Sean Candles mentioned like the top 2% of like all YouTube channels have 10,000 subscribers. So if the top 2% have like 10,000, the top 1% of real estate probably barely have like 500 or 1,000 subscribers.
And they're probably still getting a decent amount of business even with not having 10,000. So,
yeah. And I think, so that kind of ties into like the monetization side, because I don't know if you hear this a lot, but like, I feel like some people, for example, in real estate or like professions, like service-based businesses, like sometimes they feel like, oh, I want to monetize my channel. I want to get ad revenue, brand deals. But it's like, that's not really what brings in like actual, like the big revenue. It's the actual business off the back end of it. That's how you're going to make the real money on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways to monetize. Obviously, my channel is monetized. I don't make very much off monetization as far as just the channel. I make where my revenue comes from is from clients reaching out, agents referring me because they've seen the channel, they've understand the channel, they've heard my name because of people talking about the channel or sharing something I said on the channel. Obviously we do a heavy amount of agent attraction where we are, and agents want to learn how to do more YouTube. So agents reach out to me and join the brokerage to learn more about that. So there's lots of different ways as far as like, and then I do have people reach out to me that want brand deals. I have not taken anybody up on a brand deal because I've always wanted to, and maybe this is a bad thing, but I've never wanted to be swayed by someone to actually have to say things that I don't believe, right? So like if a builder were to pay me and I had to say nice things, but I didn't really feel that way, I didn't want to have to like go back on my laurels just over some money. And so that's why I've had people reach out to me to sell sheds, to promote their title companies, their lenders, all of this stuff. And I've turned them all down. Now, I could have made good money doing that, but that wasn't the goal.
I think you are right in doing that. This is my own personal belief. I feel like at the end of the day, you're able to make content for content's sake when you don't have to like sell something necessarily. And then when you look at the revenue that you've brought in from YouTube, like the millions or so over, that's from like actual clients. It's not from like the brand deals, etc., that you probably could have done. It wouldn't be the same amount of business, probably, at least in my thought.
Yeah. Now, if you're not in real estate and you're doing brand deals, it's totally different, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're totally different ballpark. I mean, look, there's lots of ways to make money in real estate. So selling stuff to realtors is another way to do that, right? So if
Mhm.
you're doing that, then that's probably okay. Like, let's say you're a media company and you're trying to sell different brands and you're going to take stuff off the back end to sell to agents. I mean, that's definitely a way to do it. It's not my favorite way.
Yeah, and that kind of ties into like the future plans of like your business, the expansion. You've talked about how you're now bringing in people to the team instead of referring out business. Like I just saw you brought in. I think there's this girl who she had a YouTube channel. She was like a new team member recently or within Real.
Yeah. I bet it's several. Yeah. Monica Church, who I helped bring them over there in Seattle. They have a whole team there. Yeah, I mean, and the cool thing about, that is now we can do a lot of different, you know, type of collaboration. And it's cool because that's one of the coolest things about what we're doing here is that it's all about the collaboration and growing the right way. So yeah, I mean, we like to work with people that are of the same, I guess, not necessarily mindset, but motivation.
So, talk to me about kind of what you're building because you've talked about potentially like acquiring a brokerage, like potentially maybe like building something that you could sell. Like, what are you trying to like build?
Yeah, I think that's all changed over the years. Now my focus is on helping agents that come to our brokerage because there's definitely a revenue model in that in itself. So, and the thing is, I'm building out a YouTube course with Will Draper, who is really, really awesome with AI stuff. So him and I are working on a YouTube course. I think at the end of the day, I just want to help agents get better. And I think that's where, you know, and authentically get better. There's definitely ways to make money in the industry. And I feel, at a certain point, I will be done physically running around selling real estate. So when I'm done at that point, physically running around selling real estate, I want to be able to help agents that are doing that, or that can learn from me, or I can, like, let's say I'm not the best at Instagram, but I know somebody else is, connecting them and being the connector for them.
Yeah. So, you're kind of are you building out the team in a way that like the kind of like Ken, where you are going to kind of just be the face, the content, and then
Yeah, that's definitely the direction we're going right now. My goal is the end of 2024 is to be out of production, myself out of production, and my team running the production. And so that's something we've been putting the SOPs in place over the last year. We've brought in a lot of people to the brokerage locally. So we're still at times referring business to them, but we will start growing our team again. Growing a team is definitely such a drain. You have to be in the position to do it. And so that is something we will work on over the next years. Probably my goal is by October to be completely out of production.
what's that going to take?
So I'll need about 7 more agents on my team, all producing about 10 million a year.
And I feel like that transition from like a high performing salesperson to like a high performing leader, it's kind of like a big shift. And there's a lot of things that you have to kind of learn or change, like new skills that you have to acquire. Like, what are you doing to make that shift?
So right now, what we're doing is I'm teaching classes once a month to a larger audience of agents at the brokerage. Trace Ron and I have a video mastermind class that we do once a month. I also have a course coming out with Will. On top of that, I'm doing a once a week, like kind of mastermind group with agents locally. And then on top of that, I do training classes once a month here in Austin. I invite agents from all over, not just Real Broker, to come in and to learn. So we have people that come in and do Instagram, YouTube. I've had people come in that are like how to grow a team. I've had, even Ken Posick, I've had him talk to agents here. So I'm trying to connect agents with the people that are doing things at a high level. And that's really, I think, where I'm stepping into that role, is by not necessarily being the person, but finding the people that are doing it and giving them the time. And that's the cool thing about what we've done with our growth here, is bringing in those people that we can say, okay, this person's doing it. Here's what they're saying.
Nice. And so if more people want to get more of you, where should they go and follow you?
Yeah, so you obviously can find me on my YouTube channel, Instagram. I post a little more agent-centric stuff on Instagram, slightly a little bit more. I'm always good. You can always DM me on Instagram. I respond there pretty well.
Nice. Appreciate it. Appreciate everything that you're doing to give back to the community and share what you've learned through all the trial and error and time that you've put in.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy.